Hi guys, it's Cornish Kayak Angler here from kayakfishing.blog. Today I'm going to be talking about anti-snag anchor systems. Now when we're anchoring, we often don't know what we're dropping the anchor down onto, and every now and then your anchor is going to get stuck in the bottom, it's going to get snagged. You're going to go to retrieve your anchor, pull it back up to your kayak or to your boat, and it's going to be stuck. You can't pull it up. It's a bit annoying, you're pulling with all your might, nothing's giving. And if your anchor chain or your anchor line is attached to the top of your anchor eye, there's going to be no chance of pulling it out. There's nothing to give, nothing's going to break. The only way you're going to free from your snagged anchor is to cut your rope or line at your kayak or at your craft. Can be quite costly losing your anchor and your chain and your setup, so ideally wants to be avoided. And luckily there are a few methods where you can set up an anti-snag system, and this is where it gives you some chance to retrieve your anchor from the snag. You know, it might be a rock, it might be a tree root, it might be a piece of wreckage, but hopefully you will be able to retrieve your anchor from that snag. And they all work in pretty much the same way, in that they will pull the anchor backwards out the snag. So your anchor's gone down, got stuck in something, you're hopefully going to pull it out in reverse from the snag and pull it out backwards to hopefully retrieve your anchor. And the methods we're going to look at today, I'm going to be looking at an anchor weak link system, also an anchor trip link system, and also an anchor bridle system. And I'm going to run through those, showing you how to set them up for both a folding grapnel anchor like this, and also for a Bruce claw anchor. And whilst these are all, I'm going to be showing you using small anchors designed for kayak fishing, the same principle will apply for larger anchors if you're fishing from a boat or a larger craft. So let's run through and have a look at each anchor trip method. Okay, so let's start with the anchor weak link method, and I'll show you how to set this up on a folding grapnel anchor. Now for this we will need the anchor, a length of chain. For this anchor I use a 1 meter length of 6mm short link galvanized chain, and you'll also need a small shackle, something like this one, a D shackle or maybe a bow shackle, and we'll also be using some small cable ties, and these will act as the weak link. Now these are a 2.5mm cable tie, small cable tie, and only small because we need to be able to break them with a pull of the anchor line. Now if you go too big with the cable tie you won't be able to break it, but this 2.5mm width size seems to work well, and I'm able to break that quite easily with a sharp pull of the anchor line. If you're using a bigger powered vessel, then you can up the size of the cable tie, but for kayak fishing this size works great. Now to set this up on the folding grapnel anchor, we take the anchor, we're going to be attaching the chain to the bottom eye of the anchor, not this end, as some people would think it's intuitive. No, we're going to the bottom of the anchor this time. There's a little eye on the bottom, we're going to attach the chain to that using the shackle. So we just undo the shackle, there's a little cross bolt there, undo that, pop the shackle through the end link on the chain, like so. And we can simply just bolt that to that bottom eye on the anchor. Now the next step is to run the anchor chain up the shaft of the anchor and alongside the top eye. Now we're going to pick a link that's right alongside the top eye. This one here lines up nicely with that top eye, and we're going to attach it to the top eye using that cable tie. So if we just grab a cable tie, attach that link. Now as you're tightening the cable tie, it doesn't have to be done rock solid tight, you can leave it a little slack. As you can see there's some movement there. And that's it, that's attached like so. Now the idea is that when you're snagged or when you're anchored, the force is running up the chain along the anchor shaft, and as you're pulling tight against that anchor there's no stress on that cable tie whatsoever. You can pull as hard as you want, that cable tie is not going to break. So For a snag, we're at anchor, everything's tight, nothing's breaking there. And the idea is that when you're snagged, you can snap this cable tie and release the chain. Now to do this, as you're snagged, you need to paddle or cruise your vessel up tide of where you're anchored. So if you've been anchored down tide, you turn around, you need to get up tide of your anchor, paddle right past it, let out plenty of anchor warp, paddle right past it, and when you feel you're a good way past it, as you do that, the chain's moving, it's changing the angle that is applied to the top of the anchor there, and it's putting all the stress on that cable tie. So at the moment you're anchored, you're snagged, you're pulling with all your might, you can't free your anchor, nothing's breaking, there's no stress on that cable tie, but as you paddle up tide or go up tide, all of a sudden there's a harsh angle against the top of the anchor, all the stress is applied to that cable tie. I'm going to stand up for this bit, and we're using this vice as a prop for a snag, could be a rock on the seabed, and with a sharp pull you'll be able to break that cable tie like so, and hopefully your anchor will release from its snag and pull out backwards in reverse and release your anchor so you can retrieve it. So you're snagged, cable tie snaps, and you can pull it out in reverse from the snag. It worked quite well there in that example, and that allows you to retrieve your anchor, and to reset you would just add a new cable tie to the top. And as you see, it functioned as a weak link that we were able to break pretty easily, and that works really well. I use it all the time, works about 9 times out of 10. Some snags are really unforgiving and the anchor's that wedged in, even when a cable tie releases it still can't free itself, and you know, every now and then you just got to call it a day with some anchors, but for most of the time that method works really well. So what I'll do is I'll show you how to set that up also on the Bruce anchor, or sometimes called the claw anchor. So it's set up in a slightly different way. We'll have a look at that next. Okay, so next we're going to look at how to set up the anchor weak link trip system on a Bruce anchor, or sometimes called a claw anchor. Now this differs slightly from how we just attach the chain to the folding grapnel anchor. There's nothing stopping us attaching the chain to the bottom eye on this anchor, like so, with a shackle, running up and attaching the cable link, weak link, to the top eye again. However, I find on these small Bruce anchors, claw anchors, adding the weight of the chain along the top of the anchor can sometimes cause the anchor to fall upside down, land on the seabed upside down, and that often means it won't bite the bottom correctly, or it will cause you to slip quite a way along the bottom before the anchor will manage to flip over and grab the bottom. So we can get around this, as quite a few people have started doing it, using a length of lightweight rope or cord, or sometimes stainless wire, along the top of the anchor shaft, and starting the anchor chain from the very top of the anchor. This tends to work better. It keeps the anchor falling in the correct way through the water, so that it contacts the bottom the right way up. Also puts a lot more weight to the chain off the nose of the anchor, causing it to tilt and dig into the bottom straight away with more efficiency. So I'll go show you how we set that up, and to do this it's very easy. Just use a short length of cord. This is some 3mm cord, and a small shackle, and it's just knotted onto the shackle, looping the other end. Now this is just a overhand loop in the rope to make somewhere I can attach the chain to, and this just runs along the top shaft of the anchor. So you take the small shackle, attach that to that bottom eyelet on the anchor, like so, and the cord runs along the top. As you can see, I've made this just slightly longer than the length of the anchor. But easy to make these up, just takes a little bit of trial and error to get it to the right length, like so. And what we can do now is attach that cord to that top eye using the cable tie weak link again. So we can do this like so, and as you tighten this cable tie down, again, it doesn't need to be rock solid tight to the anchor, just enough to keep it in position. As you can see, pulling on that, there's no tension on the cable tie, And to attach the chain to this, we just take another shackle, a D shackle, take the end of the chain, pass the shackle through the end link, and attach that through the cord on the top of that anchor, like so. Now, as you can see, there's no extra weight along the top of the anchor, it's only that cord. All the weight of the chain is off the nose of the anchor, so that's going to fall through the water, land on the bottom the correct way up. The weight of the chain is going to tilt the top of the anchor down and drive that anchor, scoop it into the bottom. Works really well on clean ground. And again, this is just 6mm short link galvanised chain. I'm using 1.5 meters with this anchor. And again, the snagging system, anti-snag system, works in the exact same way as it did with the folding grapnel anchor. And again, I'll use this vise as a prop to show what happens. So when you're at anchor, all the force running along the anchor, along the shaft, along the chain, there's no tension on that cable tie. You can pull as hard as you want, you can be anchored as hard as you want. That's not going to break that cable tie. But when you're snagged, again, same principle, paddle up tide, opposite direction from where you've been sitting at anchor, to get your craft well past, to put an angle against that cable tie. So as before, you're paddling up tide, a good way past it. There's now an aggressive angle against the anchor, and all the stress is now on that cable tie. And again, with a sharp pull of the anchor line, hopefully your cable tie will break and pull this anchor out backwards. So I'm going to stand up again and show that in action. So we're snagged, good start pull, cable tie is now broken, and as you're pulling your anchor line, you can retrieve your anchor backwards from the snag. And again, that works really well in that example. And again, you would retrieve your anchor and just pop a new cable tie on the top, and you're set up again. Again, this works really well. Now, these anchors are designed for use on soft ground, so the likes of sand, gravel, shingle, mud. So the chance of getting snagged is quite slim, but for the sake of an extra shackle and a short piece of cord, you can set this up with the anti-snag system, and it works really well, so that if you ever do get stuck, you've got a really good chance of getting your anchor back. Now, the next method I'm going to look at is the anchor trip link method, which works on a very similar principle to this. It just uses a nice little gadget ready made for the job of being an anchor trip system. Okay, so the next anti-snag anchor system we're going to look at uses what's called an anchor trip link. Now, this works similar to the cable tie method in that it sort of acts as a weak link that will trip when tension's applied when you're snagged, to give you a chance of pulling your anchor out backwards from the snag. So what it uses is this little thing here. This is called the anchor trip link. Now, these are available periodically on eBay. There's a guy who makes them, and every so often he'll put them on eBay. Sometimes they're on there, sometimes they're not. He's also got a website, anchortrip.co.uk. You can find them on there as well, or contact the guy who makes these. Essentially, it's an oblong shaped piece of stainless wire. There's a split at one end, sort of like some jaws there, with a sliding tension collar, and a link here which you can use to attach to your chain. I'll show you how to do all that in a second. The principle is that you have a shackle that will attach to the top eye of your anchor. Now, the jaws will go over the shackle, the tension collar will hold it in place, and under normal anchoring, when you're fishing away, we are under such a tension on the collar that it won't trip. But when you're snagged and you pull really hard under lots of strain, the jaws will slip over the shackle, release your chain from the top of the anchor, and allow you to pull your anchor out backwards from the snag, and hopefully you'll get your anchor back. I'll show you how to do that now. And for it, you'll just need your length of chain again. Again, I'm just using a meter of 6mm short link galvanised chain. And you'll need a couple of shackles. These are just D shackles, and your anchor and the trip link. So again, we attach the chain to the bottom eye of the anchor using one of the shackles. So we'll do that now. So that's attached on there like so. To the top eye of the anchor, going to attach your other shackle. And that's attached like so. Now with your anchor trip link, if you slide the collar towards the jaws, it gets to a point where you can snap the little collar off. It's shaped with a little hook. You can hook that easily on and off the wire. But if you unhook that, the jaws open up. You can pop that over the shackle, squeeze it shut and snap that collar back in place like so. And with that tension collar, it slides along the oblong. I'll set it about halfway for this example here. But essentially, the closer it is to the jaws, the harder it is for the jaws to separate and pop over the shackle, making it harder to trip. The further it is away from the jaws, the easier it is for it to trip. Now, it takes a little bit of trial and error on the water to find the optimum place to have this where it won't trip whilst you're at anchor. So if it's a little bit choppy or a little bit of swell, you just need to account for that so that it won't trip whilst you're fishing. But with a sharp pull on your anchor line, when you're snagged, when everything goes tight and there's a lot of strain on it, the anchor trip link will trip, release your chain from the top of the anchor and allow you to pull it out backwards. And to set that up, you need to take your chain, run it up along the shaft of the anchor to the top of the trip link. And you see the link here is about in line with the top of the trip link. Now go about 3, 4, maybe 5 links above. I'll go 4 links above there. And this is where you're going to attach the little link here. So this is the link which attaches the trip link to the chain. So we can pop that in place. A bit fiddly. And that screws down in place like so. Now you'll be able to see that the chain running between the top of the trip link and the bottom of the anchor is slack. No tension on that chain. All the tension is now at those jaws attaching to that shackle. So even when you're at anchor, all the tension is at this point here. So like I say, it's important to have the tension collar set so that whilst you're anchored it's not going to trip, but with a sharp pull it will trip, release that chain from the top of the anchor and allow you to pull it out backwards. I'll show you how that will work now. Just stand up, use the vice again as an example of being snagged, but you see all the tensions on that link. What you can do with a sharp pull, you can just see that trip came off the shackle. Now what you can do is paddle up tight. Sometimes the anchor releases straight away, but you can paddle up tight again or take your craft up tight away, and as you do that, hopefully your anchor will pull straight out of the bottom like so. As you see, what I've done there is when that was set up, I pulled the I'll set it back up again here a second. I pulled it in line with the direction where we were anchored. Slightly different from the cable tie method where we had to go up tight to get the angle of attack on the top of the anchor, but with this you can pull it in line with where you're snagged, so you can pull in as much cord as you can, everything goes tight. I'm definitely snagged, give it a really sharp pull, this trip will pop off and release your chain from the anchor. There's also nothing stopping you powering up tide, especially if you've got a boat with an engine. Power up tide, again it will just straight away put the pressure straight on the link, but at the same time, as soon as it releases, it will pull your anchor straight out of the snag. So that would work like so, pulling, pulling, pulling. As you do it, it pulls and the anchor comes straight out of the snag. Now this trip link works really well, really well. Once you get it set up and know exactly where to set that tension bar for your fishing and the conditions, it will work every time. It's very unlikely you lose your anchor with one of these trip links, so they're really worth investing in. These small ones here are designed for the kayaks. You can get larger ones for bigger boats, capable of holding big fishing boats. So well worth having a look at those. They work really well. And next I'll show you how to set one of those up on the Bruce anchor as well. Uses a slightly different way of attaching it. Exactly the same principle, but I'll show you that next. Okay, so let's have a look at how to set up the anchor trip link system on the Bruce anchor, claw anchor. Again, it uses the same bits as the folding grapnel anchor. You've got your anchor, the chain. For this I'm using 1.5 meters of 6mm short link galvanised chain, a couple of shackles, and your anchor trip link. Now on the Bruce anchor, it's going to be set up slightly differently. As with the cable tie method, I'm using this length of cord that runs from a shackle at the bottom of the anchor along the top of the anchor to the top with a loop there. Now to set this up, I'm going to take one shackle and attach this to the top eye on the anchor. So that just bolts straight onto there. Tighten that up, that's on there like so. With a second shackle, I'm going to attach the chain to the loop of cord. So we pass the shackle through the chain and bolt that through the loop of cord, like so. Now, just as we did with the folding grapnel anchor, we just got to set the anchor trip link up on the top shackle. So again, slide that locking collar down, unclip it, opens up the jaws, pop those over the shackle, squeeze it together, clip it back in place, get that sliding collar, we'll put it about halfway. And again, you need to line up the chain with the trip link, go about 4 links past the link that's in line with the top of the anchor trip. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to go up here and then we attach that link that comes with the trip. So we'll pop that in there and attach that there. So there we go. I could have perhaps gone a link down on that to take out some of the slack, but the idea is that slack there running between the back of the anchor and the link at the top. So that slack, all the tension at anchor is on that clip at the jaws. So just as before, I'll use the vice again as a prop. Drop to the bottom, you're anchored, everything's sitting nicely on the bottom, but you've become snagged. Just as before, you can give it a good sharp pull. As soon as everything comes tight, give it a good sharp pull and the trip releases. You motor your boat or paddle your kayak up tide, and as you do so, hopefully you'll be able to pull straight out of the snag in reverse and free your anchor. Or again, you could have it attached and go straight past up tide anyway and give it a sharp pull and hopefully it will release as well. But just like with the folding grapnel anchor, that system works really well with the Bruce anchor. You become snagged, everything goes tight, give it a sharp pull, trip releases, chain release from the top of the anchor, and you're able to pull your anchor out backwards from the snag. Okay, so the final anti-snag anchor method we're going to look at is known as the Anchor Bridle system. Now this works by having a length of cord which runs along the top of the anchor, and now it's attached to a shackle at both the top eye of the anchor and the bottom eye of the anchor. There's a piece of slack cord, it's just a bit longer than the anchor itself. Now this works a slightly different way to their weak link system and the anchor trip system in that there's no weak link here. But it's a method which will allow you to at least have a chance of changing the angle at which you pull your anchor from whilst you're snagged. So instead of being able to pull it from the back, this bridle allows you to slide your anchor chain to the back of the anchor and have some chance of pulling it out backwards. There is no weak link in this system. So yeah, I've made this bridle out of a piece of 6mm braid on braid polypropylene cord. Yeah, 2 shackles just to attach at either end of the anchor. Bit of trial and error to get it the right length, but once tied it should be just a touch longer, so that your chain can sit in a loop of cord at the top there, just past the knot. But yeah, we just take another shackle and attach your length of chain. Again, I'm just using 1.5 meters of 6mm short link galvanized chain. Place your shackle through the link, place the shackle around the bridle cord and attach that shackle. So now as you'll see, the shackle's attached, your chain's attached to that anchor. It's sitting up at the top of the anchor on this Bruce anchor. Works really well because there's no chain sitting along the top of the anchor like I mentioned before. It's just the cord, lightweight cord, the full weight of the chain off the nose of the anchor. So that's sitting there like so. Now, when you're anchored, you've dropped down again. The vice snag here we're using as a prop. You're anchored, all the stress is off the top of the anchor, it holds your anchor fine. Now, when you're snagged, you need to move. Trying to pull it, it won't move, but what you can do is move your craft or your kayak again up tide of where the anchor is, and whilst you do that, let out plenty of anchor line, and as you're powering up tide, hopefully the angle's changing and this shackle will slide down the bridle like so, to the point where you're way past your anchor, right up tide of it. And as you now pull the anchor, hopefully it's now been pulled from the back of the anchor, and you'll be able to pull backwards from your snag like so. Now, it doesn't work quite as well as the weak link or anchor trip link system because there's no weak link to snap. You can't necessarily feel it happening, but it works reasonably well, and I've had mixed success with it. It works sometimes it hasn't, and the unforgivable snags which just won't allow you to have your anchor back. But if you haven't got an anchor trip link, or you haven't got any cable ties done around to make you another weak link system, this makes an easy system to make up. You can literally simply, even if you haven't got shackles, tie some cord at the top eye and the bottom eye of the anchor, and just attach the chain, run the chain through the braid, and you've at least got a quick and easy anti-snag setup, which will give you some hope of getting a snagged anchor back. And this system set up on a Bruce anchor here, it's exactly the same on a grapnel anchor. And I'll just show you that now. We'll just take the chain off this one here, take that out of the way. And here I've got a grapnel anchor, again set up with a bridle with a piece of cord, shackle at the top, cord's just a bit longer past the end of the anchor, and a shackle at the bottom, the cord tied on. And again, you just simply attach your chain around that bridle, so that when you're anchored, the chain's sitting off the top of the anchor, again holding it down really well on the bottom, so you'll hold bottom well, it'll dig in well. But when you're snagged, you're stuck, there's no way of you pulling it out in that direction. Again, paddle up tide, or power your vessel up tide. Plenty of anchor line out so that everything's running slack, and as you do so, the shackle should slide towards the back of the anchor now, lying on the bottom. And again, as you put pressure on now that you're the opposite direction, you'll hopefully be able to pull your anchor backwards out of the snag and hanging upside down, and you'll be able to pull it back up to the surface. Again, it's easy to reset, you just drop your anchor like so, but with this system you have got to perhaps lower your anchor a little slower through the water, because it can have a tendency sometimes for the bridle to sit like so. But with a grapnel anchor it's not too bad, the weight of the grapnel anchor is all at the base and it will sort of hold itself down, but sometimes a Bruce anchor can sit side on as it falls. So just slowly lower your anchor and make sure it arrives at the seabed the correct way. That there is the Anchor Bridle system, a quick easy method to set up an anti-snag system, perhaps not quite as effective as the weak link system using the cable tie or the anchor trip system, but again another method you can use to have some hope of getting a snagged anchor back. Okay guys, so that covers the different ways we can set up anti-snag anchor systems. So we had the weak link system, which uses a cable tie attached to the top of the anchor as a weak link. We also had the anchor trip link method, using the trip link that you can get online. And then also the Anchor Bridle method, using the loop of cord on top of the anchor. So 3 ways which all give you a great chance of retrieving your snagged anchor, so you don't have to go cutting your anchor line and losing your anchor. As always, there's plenty more information on kayak anchoring and plenty of other kayak fishing topics on my website www.kayakfishing.blog, and for plenty more videos hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.